Hi and welcome to this week's video. Not as much work as I'd like to have done due to work stopping play. I've been away for half the week and yeah, that's rather cut me off from being able to do that little bit each evening. That said, I've done about a quarter of a wing's geodetic. I've done half of the lower geodetic in the starboard wing. All the compression ribs have been done. Slight differences in the starboard side, I'll talk about that in the video, and stiffeners done on each of the wingtips. So on the lower side, we've got to say it's been productive, and any production is great. So see what I was doing. Catch you in a mo. I've marked up and made the first set of verticals. As you'll see, I've got them marked. It's because there's a slight taper at the end for the top of the compression strut, and I've actually made up the first station's compression front to rear sections. These are the bits which actually do the work. Those verticals are really there to hold it in place, but also to keep the spar web stiff. Although I've got to say, at this inboard end, it's got a lot of stuff stiffening it up already with that diagonal there. Quite a deep wooden block, therefore it shouldn't need much stiffening. But on this face, well, we've got the wooden block here giving it stiffness. But generally, elsewhere where these compression ribs go, it's a sort of a bare web, a bit like that. So it helps to give a stiffness there. But it's the front to rear compression which is important with these pieces, sort of fitting in like that there. They need to be. This is one of the strange ones. Normally you allow a little bit of a gap for glue. With these particular struts, I'm making it not a tight fit but a very close tolerance fit front to back, because it's being clamped lightly against the verticals there. The verticals are doing the job of holding this thing together. Remember, end grain, glue on end grain doesn't give a very strong joint. Although this glue is quite good with its tensile strength, in other words, sort of stretching strength, it's far better in sort of shear type load. So the blocking on the side here, vertical blocking, is doing the work. So I've done that, the first set, to act as a bit of a pattern, so I can roughly cut the others now. I can cut the verticals all identical to these, but these front to rear ones will be tailored to each station that they go at. As you can see, I've drawn in the positions for the half ribs, so I know exactly where those stations are. All I've done is where we've got the compression members or compression ribs fitted, I've marked their sort of position, and I'll show you on the far side here. I've marked a line. The vertical will be on this side, and the compression piece itself will go straight against there. The reason for doing it in that format is to put the verticals inboard of the compression piece, because that way it keeps the weight inboard towards the centre of the aircraft. I know it's only a minuscule amount, but every bit you can get towards the centre of gravity is the better. So the rear one here, I've set up so the vertical will be inboard, but for the reverse side, it says, hopefully getting things in shot. Where am I? Up here. There we go. Because of the way that this is the centre point here for the actual compression piece, the vertical is going to be mounted outboard, so it's the only one that's mounted outboard. I'm fitting the vertical pieces for the compression ribs front and rear. I've already got the rear ones bonded into place as they are there. Okay, so the compression struts. Just got these cut to length. This corner here where it goes in by the vertical may need rounding off. I had to round it off at the front end here, just where a little bit of glue squeeze out was. I could sand it back, but it's not over the surface, so I haven't. And as you can sort of see here, it just drops in. No pressure, just enough pressure just to hold it in place, and that's it. So I will clamp it, because I found that when you put the glue on, the T88, it becomes a lubricant and it also tries to slide all over the place. And you shall see, just this one just drops in. Wouldn't take much for it to drop out. It's not tight at all. There we go. But it is an extremely close fit. There's no real gaps anywhere there, and I'll clamp those together once I've put the glue on. Just got the 2 compression ribs to do. I've done all the others. Let me show you what happens on the starboard inboard one though, because that's a completely different sort of viewpoint there. So the starboard inboard compression strut, one might argue don't really need one at all, because of the way we've got supports here for the step, but they're only supporting the top, they're not supporting the lower side. So there's nothing in the plans about omitting the compression strut. If you have the top one going across the top here, because we've got cross members going across from one side to the other to support the footrest, you'd have to cut through the compression strut or cut through them, and either way that's going to weaken things. So having the 2 going front to rear, they're doing the job of the upper side. So what I've done is I've kept the vertical, but I've cut it off at the diagonal here, just to save a bit of weight, but it's got enough distance there that it's actually helping to keep the rigidity in the web, and a nice strong joint for holding the compression member. And on this side, on the rear face here, I've kept the vertical the full length because it's doing the job of supporting the web, but I've cut it off here at sort of near enough a 45-degree angle, because it's not doing anything for us as far as strength there, but it's doing the job of supporting here. So that's what I've got going on there. I'll show you as we go through the step, which there's a bit of work to work out on that. Things don't quite go according to the plan on the front side, where it sort of says support blocks. It does for the inner one, but not for the outer one, and the positioning of it just doesn't work. So I'll discuss that with you when it comes to it. So important factors when, well, for me, I think anyway, when I'm bonding these bits in, I make sure I put resin on the end grain as early as I can. I'll put that to one side, do the same on the next one. So resin the end grain. Resin on the sides where it's going to go. And position there. Now I can smear a small amount of resin on the faces. It just helps to get things sort of pre-impregnated, I might say. Move that one along so it's not quite so much in my way. That clamped in. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom. That feels good. Clamp that one. Set it down so it feels nice and flush with the bottom, like that. Make sure it's spot on. I can put this fellow in. Sure that's nice and flush with the top, both sides. Wipe off any excess that I can see or feel, and go on to do the next one. So for the positioning of the geodetic going across the wing, I think we really need to have these rib reinforcing or stiffeners which go on the inner face of the outer rib and the outer face here of the inboard ribs for both wings fitted, and so prepping for the next stage, which will be putting in the lower geodetic, I want to start putting these reinforcers in. This needs to go back to this false trailing edge for the outboard side, and that's a 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch strip going across there. It's the same stuff as here, so going across, and when you look at the plan, it says finding the bit, there we go, looking at the plan here and taking the measurement going back across from here, and the fact from the plan position for the cut lines there and there for the aileron bay ribs, the cuts into here are half the width of the piece of wood, so 3/8 of an inch. So allowing for that 3/8 of an inch and the measurements which are actually on the rib, I've worked out how far forward on the rib this bit here needs to be. I've made them very slightly longer, the strips slightly longer, so these are just slightly over length at the moment. I'll cut them to length, which is to there, and there's a mark down here where I've worked it out to, but this is really thick, well, really heavy wood compared to the capping pieces, and the capping pieces I steamed, so I've done, well, I've soaked in boiling water, so I've done exactly the same here with these. So this is one set, so the simple ones for the outboard end. The inboard end will take a little bit more work, and I'll show you those when I get round to it as to what extra work is required for them. So here I am, just starting to put in the first bits of geodetic, as we've got the ribs out here curing, so going across, and thanks to hopefully I've got this right, Sawyer's dad, who's building a Fisher Dakota Hawk. He had a bit of an issue with his geodetic and the compression struts or compression members, and he sort of shows how he gets around that issue. But it made me think and how, double check and make sure I had a good plan in place, so hence the shout out for him. I've got the geodetic going through from here over the top of the rib member here where it's glued at the spar, glued here, glued to the spar down here. But I haven't, whatever you do, don't glue it to the compression member here. And you can sort of see I've put a little packing piece in there, because the other section of geodetic, which goes on top of this one, comes across from the corner here, goes on top of this one, but under the compression member, on top of this one, and then on top of that one, and then under the spar there. You've got to have a gap for it, so I've put that packing piece in to make sure the geodetic's in its correct orientation as the resin dries or cures, and hopefully I can do the bonding. Same for this one here. So I've got the piece of geodetic which will go from the corner here between the compression member and that piece of geodetic, over the top of this piece of geodetic, top of this piece of geodetic, and under the spar down there. So, big shout out for him, because it made me think, and I may well have just glued it because it runs very close to that compression member. Also, while I was about it, I've been making up all the little packing pieces to go under the ribs at the front spar. They're all small pieces just like that, which go underneath. They don't have to go all the way to the front, and some of them probably aren't, but it just helps to firm up that the rib at that point there onto the spar. Of course, we need that gap there, otherwise it'd be next to impossible to thread all the ribs onto the spars when we build the wing. So there's always going to be a little bit of a clearance there. That's where I've got to at the moment. I can't do the geo out here because I need to have the stiffener bonded in place and fully sorted, although I did realise I had to cut off the corner of my stand here to allow for the geo to go through, because it was going to interfere. Had to do the same back there, just a little bit. Another pointer to show out, the geo at this point for the two bays, inboard bays, don't come right to the very back, because another section of geodetic will be coming out from there going across to the trailing edge. So it shows it on the plan that you basically go to the sort of halfway point with the ends there. But these ones here do go all the way to the back, but you'll see that they don't all meet up with the rib. One does, this one does, and that's down to how the rib vertical is here. If you try to make it so it goes out to there, it would ride up this piece of geo and wouldn't sit flat. So to make it sit comfortably, I've allowed it to be inboarded a bit. It makes no difference to the strength of how the geo works. It doesn't have to butt up against the rib. It's got its bond face on here. There will be some differences to the geo in this area, because I've got the step. I will not have the rear geodetic in this area, so the diagonal pieces will come right to the back, where here in this particular bay, the second bay out, there'll be geo in there to stop this rib here from being able to rack at all, as we have the aileron hinge mounting ply plate goes onto there, but this lot here will be stiffened up by the walkway panel, so don't need it here. Where on the port wing, where I haven't got the step going in, of course we'll have the diagonals going in both bays, top and bottom. There's just the slight differences. Of course you'll see that as we get into that part later on in another video, no doubt. So each of the tip ribs you've seen that I've put in the section here, which the stiffener, and that comes back here about 9/16 of an inch, calculated against where the false trailing edge would go. And to make sure everything keeps in line, piece of wood here clamped to the rib and clamped to that rib there, and again here at the front, stops the stiffener from being able to twist or move in that sort of direction. Keeps it nice and flat, along with the sort of the packers which I've got going through on the spars themselves. Make sure it sort of stays reasonably flat in that format. And then got G clamps. They're not clamping the joint, so I can screw those down quite tightly, and they actually keep this bit level on both sides, which is nice. And then lightly clamped to make sure the rib is joined onto that that stiffener. You'll see that I've put packing tape on here so that this separates, doesn't get bonded on, and where the G clamps are, I've got some wax paper on there. Of course a little bit more at this end here because of the curve, just to make sure it conforms, but as you know, I did the old boiling water trick and put them into the form to pre-bend those stiffeners, because they are chunky bits of wood compared to the rib and things like that. They're 3 times the width from the solid, so they don't want to bend quite as easily. If you didn't do that sort of water steaming forming trick, I think you'd be hard pushed to stop them from deforming the rib as they try to spring straight. It would put a strain on the rib for sure, and on the geodetic in the rib anyway, for no real reason, no gain. So that's where I'm at with that particular section. I've got a load of geodetic cut ready to go in, but I've basically run out of time for this week, so I've got some down here which I'm not using because it's got some knots in it, a bit of a shape going on there. I can use sections of it for the sort of like half-length geodetic, which can go sort of from the corner here to the sort of centre over there, just the little short pieces. Not as much done this week as I would have liked, because work stopped play. I had to go away for work, and I lost effectively over half a week's worth of building time. But hey ho, without the job don't have the money, without the money can't play. Anyway, catch you next week. Bye now. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up. You can subscribe or even hit the little bell notification for future videos. Any comments would be appreciated, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, go fly and feel the sky.